Good morning. It being 10 a.m., I'd like to call the meeting of Public Works and Highways to order. And we're going to start with House Bill 375 and recognize the main sponsor, Representative McGuire. You're on, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Dan McGuire. I represent the town of Epsom. So this bill just started as an idea that came to me when I saw how capable modern ATVs are and how expensive. I mean, some of them are $20,000 up, so they're almost standard vehicles, right? I mean, and they essentially all come with headlights and brake lights and so on. And it seemed to me that it would sort of enhance tourism if people were allowed to use them not just off-road, but also on-road in some cases, right? So they can go from their perhaps rental property to restaurants and stores and things like that. And so I started looking into the situation. It turns out there's lots of other people who were sort of there with that idea way ahead of me. And I discovered that this is already implemented in the city of Berlin and also the town of Colebrook and possibly others that I don't know of. But it is something that I've heard from the representatives from Berlin, that it's been a big boost to their town's economy, that they have designated town roads as being, and I believe some state roads as being capable of people driving their ATVs into town and so on. And it's caused a lot more tourism in their area, more people going to restaurants, all this sort of stuff. So they're very positive about it. And so I thought that I would put in the bill just to, I mean, there's currently nothing in law, as far as I can tell, that allows it or disallows it or so on, or gives it any structure. So I thought I'd put in the bill so that our law would have kind of a, ground rules of how this is to be done, and certain structure to it that towns can adopt. It's all, none of this is mandatory. It's just that if you want to allow ATVs to be used on your roads, this is the structure you would follow. And so I'm not wedded to any of the details in it. If you think I'm gone over or under in some area and want to change things, great. This is really not, I don't often put in bills in this area, so my knowledge of it is not that broad. But let me point out specifically what it does. So it basically allows a municipality to designate certain road segments as being available for ATV travel, and it would require them to make a map, both available at their town office and online, of those areas. It allows them, if they want to put up signs showing it. It allows them to designate those areas as having a certain seasonality. So, if you only want to do it in summer or only in winter or not in mud season or whatever, you can do that. It requires that those sections of road, the way this is written, it has a maximum speed limit of 40 miles an hour. Now, I have in the back of my mind that I intended 30 miles an hour. So I don't remember what Berlin actually does. I think it might be 30 and not 40, but maybe you'll find out about that. But anyways, it's only for roads up to some speed limit. You could change that if you wanted to. And the other thing, it puts some restrictions on ATVs themselves, and the one you might want to think about is directional signals. So they have to have they would have to have headlights, taillights, brake lights. I think that's already standard in the law. It adds here a horn, emergency flashers, and directional signals. And my understanding is most are not manufactured with directional signals, but those are an add-on that people can get if they want to. So I just thought for safety, if you're driving these at night, that's an important feature. You might think otherwise. So that's the part that might be controversial. But other than that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Representative McGuire. Representative Faulkner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking the questions. I drive a side-by-side, which is registered for travel on the roadways as an agricultural vehicle, but it has different requirements. And there was a state law that allows that, but doesn't include horns, directional signals, or flashers. Does require lights, requires mirrors, and requires a slow vehicle triangle to be mounted on the back. So is there an attempt to, I wonder if there's a conflict between one set of regulations for one vehicle. It looks very much like your off-road vehicles, and whether you've really, whether you considered that particular conflict.
Yes, thank you for the question. My intention is not to get in the way of any existing use, right? So you talked about agricultural. So this is intended mostly to be on top of whatever people use the road for and the ways they use the road, and be more, again, for tourism or occasional use and that kind of thing. So I don't think there's necessarily a conflict, because if you already have your agricultural plate and your other requirements and you're following those, I don't think this precludes that in any way.
I'm sorry, any other questions? Representative Bogert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Along with the ATVs that are in modern day with this requirement, golf carts seem to also be heading towards that way, where a lot of cities and stuff communities and stuff are allowing golf carts to be driven around like a car, and they have all the same function and stuff. Would that also be something that is thought of?
Yes, thank you for your question. So, I mean, a golf cart is sort of a summer-only vehicle, right? So I don't know it's quite as likely to be wanted to be used in New Hampshire as ATVs, right? But I guess it would depend. There's a certain section of law here, RSA 215-A:14, which has specifications for what these kind of vehicles have. And so I guess if a golf cart met that RSA, then yes, it would be included.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on line 6 on the bill, the question I have is, I'm not sure what this exemption portion is here on line 6, where it says municipalities and the Bureau of Trails are exempt from the permitting process and requirements of 215A3 regarding bridge or connector on a portion of the highway designated for ATV travel. So can you clarify that for me? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and I don't think I can. I saw somebody from Bureau of Trails here who might be able to answer that better. That's something the drafter put in and found, so.
I'd be happy to wait till he
Yeah.
gets up and speaks. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My committee is meeting now, so I'm afraid I have to
Please.
leave.
Representative Prue. All right. Okay, only speaking on the bill, not speaking on said bill.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No. He shouldn't have filled out the pink card. Representative St. Clair. Also. Not, don't have to fill out a pink card. These-
That's good. These are not good. I apologize to the committee, knew the error.
No, no. Alan Hennessy, please. NHDOT.
Hi, good morning. For the record, my name is Alan Hanscom. I'm the State Maintenance Engineer for New Hampshire Department of Transportation. We have a couple of portions of the bill that cause questions for our agency. The first being the question that Representative Brown posed regarding municipalities and Bureau of Trails being exempt from the permitting process. The permitting process is what we use in state agencies to authorize, to interact with applicants and issue the authorization for the use, if that is the end product of it, to exempt entities from the permitting process kind of subverts what the Department of Transportation does to regulate the highways. So we question how that might work in determining what happens and what the end result might be from the request to use a certain section of road. So we would request that be revisited. And the other comment that we would offer is that we recommend that they follow the requirements of RSA 215A6 9, which includes the requirement for a public hearing, signage at the limits of the segments designated to alert road users that they can expect ATV travel on the road, as well as alert the ATV users of where they can start using the road and end using the road. And imposing requirements on the riders to follow the regulations. That being said, I think I'd open to questions.
Any questions? Representative Malone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. So, do you have any data on ATV safety in New Hampshire? For example, just what's the, and particularly maybe on the rates of accidents that ATVs have?
I don't do ATVs. I do highway maintenance, so I'm not familiar with what with the question that you're asking.
May I follow?
Please.
Thank you. So, do you know where we could get that data?
The enforcement agencies for ATV use, which would be State Police and Fish and Game, I think would be better suited to answer.
Thank you very
that.
much.
Thank you, Representative Malone. Is the gentleman filling out a pink card to speak? Okay, thank you.
Sounds like you have a lot of questions that are
I'm sorry, Representative Bogert, you're over here in my blind spot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just curious if you could clarify, because when you were speaking to that section 1, and I didn't know if I quite understood what you were trying to make a point at for your recommendation for that section.
Sure, thank you. Well, as written, it says that the municipalities and Bureau of Trails are exempt from the permitting process, regarding bridge or connectors along the portion of the highway. So the connector is a trail along the roadside. If they're exempt from the permitting process, what determines where the travel is allowed? How are we alerted to it? Do we have an opportunity to review and approve it? This says that, for instance, the town can can determine a section of road to be open for ATV use, but we're out of the picture. So we, not being involved in a permitting process, we're not aware of the goings on and who's asking for what. So I don't know I don't know what that means, how they would expect it to operate. So.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So let's say an expressway went through a town. Sometimes they do. And are you indicating that maybe not being able to have a seat at the table, they could allow ATVs all of a sudden to be on an expressway for a short period of time and then come back off at will? Based on the municipality only saying that they can do that?
I believe that might be the result of this. We don't know. Some towns have interstate highway, main thoroughfares, and back roads, and it's not clear what the guidelines would be, where it would be allowed. So.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Representative Rockmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Representative McGuire told us that the towns of Berlin and Colebrook had already opened up some of their roads to ATVs. So am I to understand that those towns went through a permitting process with DOT before they did so?
Yeah, there was a coordinated effort between the OHRV groups, regulatories, agencies, and DOT.
Thank you. Any further questions? Representative Juris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So would it be my understanding, like you talked about Berlin and Gorham, that you need the necessary signage where the sign would say where you can get on and where you could get off the state road?
Yes, on the designated routes up in the North Country, there is a sign that says ATV use allowed, and I think on the far end of it, there's a end ATV use or signs to that effect. So there's a sign at either end of the allowed section to alert operators not to continue on where they're going. So.
Follow up.
Quick follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in this case, in the way the bill's written, the town would pay for the signage, but the permitting process through the state wouldn't be able to define what you just said, where you can access and then where you can depart the particular state road.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but today there's permitting processes for many activities in a right-of-way, and there's to define the use of the driveway of the trench permit for water sewer lines or something like that. There would be an ability to have designated routes and include the signage where required. That's part of it today. If you look in Berlin Gorham, the signs are there. So I'm not sure that one prohibits the other from happening. So.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you. And I'd like to call on Captain Michael, is that Eastman? Eastman of Fish and Game, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the members of the committee. I did intend to testify today just because my colonel had asked me just to come in and sign in. But it seems that you have a lot of questions about this. So I will start to say that my commission did oppose this bill, just kind of the way that it's written. And not speaking to Representative McGuire or Senator Pearl, I think they are good intentioned in this bill and submitting this bill. Really, at this time, there are laws so 215A6 says that you need to have permission or you cannot operate on highways, class 1, 3A highways, public ways. You cannot operate OHRVs. One issue with the bill is that it speaks about ATVs, which there are definitions of. So OHRVs encompasses snowmobiles, ATVs, UTVs, and so there's a difference between those different vehicles. An ATV would be basically what we would consider the four-wheeler, or the original ones with the Honda were the three-wheelers, and those are ride-on-top motorcycle style, if you will, vehicles. A UTV is totally different. That's what you're going to see. I think that's what Representative Faulkner was speaking about, and that you get inside them, ride them. They're more like a dune buggy-esque type of vehicle. So the definition is very different between, or the vehicle by definition makes it very different. Right now, any town or any municipality can open up their roads to ATV, UTV, OHRV use, and that can be done in at a town meeting or through the selectmen, whatever the case may be. And there are laws that go along with that, saying that they have to consider what the law enforcement for that, or the law enforcement for that town, or the lack thereof, is responsible for. If there's a complaint, then the local police department is going to cover that complaint. Certainly they can do that now. There's also a law that says that towns within, and this changed probably 15 years ago, that says that in Coos County, Grafton County, and a portion of actually Hillsborough, there are state highways that are open to OHRV use. And there's actually another bill currently that I just believed it received a House number. I believe it's 367. Is that right, Rich? I believe it's 367. That speaks about extending those counties for use, for OHRV use. Just to speak on a couple of the questions that I heard, as far as OHRV accidents, our Fish and Game retains accidents. There's about 60, if you will, throughout the state, snowmobile and OHRV. And basically the largest contributing factor to that is speed and inexperience. And then I think this year, like careless and reckless kind of came in there as one of the top three. Anything that occurs, or any accidents that occur on the roads, are covered by either that municipality's police department or the state police, because we don't cover accidents on roadways. We cover the ones that happen out in the woods, on the trails. Now, certainly in absence, if state police is covering a domestic in Lancaster and can't get to cover an OHRV accident on 113 in Berlin, we will help them, obviously. And as far as I heard the question about the golf carts. Golf carts are not defined as an OHRV or an ATV, so they would not fall under this. There is actually a Department of Motor Vehicle, and I can't speak too much to it, but I do know that there is a slow-moving vehicle plate that people can get for golf carts. For instance, if they live within a community and they can drive their golf cart down to the beach, they can get that plate. And there are a lot of restrictions that go along with that as well. But that's for Department of Motor Vehicle really to speak to. As far as the special commercial plates, which Representative Faulkner was speaking about, that is a plate for agriculture and light industrial use. So that is, once again, through the Department of Motor Vehicle, and there are restrictions on that. There's, as he said, the speed limit restrictions. Agriculturally, you can only go 10 miles from the farm or wherever, that agricultural business is going on. And then light industrial is 2 miles. And I always explain it. It's like, if FW Webb had a storage area 2 miles down the road, and they want to take an ATV to go get plumbing supplies and bring them back to the main store, that would be a use that they could use it for, or any other maybe landscaping use or something like that. That's where we generally see them. So those were the questions I heard, and certainly I'm here if there's any other questions.
Point of privilege, Captain Eastman, thank you first of all, because that took care of all the questions I had that I was jotting down as we were going over here that hadn't been asked yet. And I think the most important thing that I heard out of your testimony was the fact that we already do have a procedure in place to get most of this done already, that this bill is trying to cover. Having said that, Representative Faulkner.
Thank you again. I had a couple of questions about the vehicles that are mentioned in the bill here. One is, because I think you might be familiar with it, they indicate the vehicle should be capable of going 40 miles an hour. I'm not sure it's safe to drive without OHRV tires on a paved roadway at that speed. I never do. And do most of these actually come with directional signals, flashers, and the other items here, or is that part of what a normal off-road vehicle has?
I can speak to that. It really all depends what you are looking for and what you pay for. If you walk into any OHRV store and say, I want a side-by-side, so I can go ride in Jericho State Park, you're going to get the one that has ATV tires for off-road use. Now, certainly, there are different types of UTVs out there. You can go to any tractor store and buy like a Gator style that does come with different, brakes with directionals. You can get really whatever you want. And there's a lot of aftermarket stuff out there as well. But at the end of the day, with all that said, and we're not a titled state for ATVs or UTVs or any OHRV, but at the end of the day, when they get that title in hand, it says off-highway recreational vehicle, no matter what you put on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for agreeing to answer some questions. Given that we already have the permitting process and apparently it's managed by DOT and working well, and particularly if you look at Section 2 of the bill, it seeks to preempt the existing permitting statutes. In your opinion, does this bill add any value to the process that's already in place?
I could say that certainly Department of Transportation does have a permitting process in those areas where it's allowed. They do a lot of like road crossings for snowmobile trails. So the permitting process, for instance, an example I can give you is in Gorham, there is a section of Route 16. Portions of Route 16 in Coos County are open. But there's a section from what is now Mom's, used to be Shaw's, to just before you get into town in Berlin that's closed on that section. And the reason for that is because there's a large intersection which houses Walmart, and it is quite busy. And so, for instance, that small section is closed, and there are other businesses within there besides Walmart, small strip malls above that. So so in that permitting process, yes, Route 16, you can operate on it, and you can go to Mom's and leave Mom's and buy whatever you want. But if you go beyond that, it is closed just because it is so busy in the interaction with those smaller vehicles. And understand, these vehicles they're not, they might be the size of a Toyota Yaris, but they're not through the same crash, specifics that Toyota Yaris would have over the Polaris RZR.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you just expand a little bit, Captain, on the issues that the commission had, why they're against this bill? Thank you.
Well, for one, I already stated was the ATV definition. That was one that I had brought to them. The other is that, and the way that I read it, and it's potentially that I'm reading it wrong, but the way that I saw it was that a municipality could say, yes, we want to have roads, we want to open up roads within our town, and we want to open up state highways. And a question that comes to my mind is there's different funding mechanisms there. So obviously town roads are taken care of through town funds, whereas state roads are taken care of, and I'm probably speaking out of turn here, and this gentleman can speak much better on that. But so for instance, this time of year, the town is plowing the town roads and DOT is plowing the state roads. So once again, where does that come into that funding mechanism? And now you have, low pressure tires tearing up sides of roads and pavement, and how do you pay for that? So that it just brings some questions to my mind on that side of it as far as funding. So that's really the two things that I presented to the commission and why they had issue with it.
Follow up, please.
So Captain, if I understand right, if the permitting process was in place that was kind of exempt in this initially, if that was in place, you wouldn't object to the bill as it's indicated if we cleared up the language on ATV versus OHRV?
Once again, like I said, I think that Representative McGuire and Senator Pearl are good intentioned on this bill, but I think that there are other bills out there that kind of uses the same mechanisms that we're using right now, that DOT is using, Bureau of Trails are using. That would be better to continue on with those review processes that are already in place.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Captain, there was one thing real quick. You gave an approximate number of accidents that Fish and Game has responded to. None of those were particular. They would have been all on trails, or is that those accidents are referring to also on roads? And I had a follow up to that after that.
I can't say that all of those, the majority of them are on trails, because that's really what we would keep those accidents for. Now, if, the local police department or where it happens on a road, they would do it under I believe it's a DSMV form, which is the traditional motor vehicle accident form. So because they would have to treat it as a motor vehicle.
So you wouldn't have any record of what they're responding to if they were involved with an OHRV, if a town municipality responded to that. The Fish and Game doesn't track that.
We do not. Okay. Sometimes they send them to us and sometimes they don't.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Captain.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to hear our final speaker, Craig Rennie, please. Step up and identify yourself.
Good morning. My name is Craig Rennie. I'm the Chief of the Bureau of Trails at the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, and I was here this morning to help answer some questions. So I did fill out a card so I could just speak briefly. The permit process and by the way, we're not taking a position on the bill, but I just want to clarify a few things. The permit process that was questioned earlier by Representative Brown, so that process that we go through Bureau of Trails and DOT now works very well. We look for, we permit highway crossings and connectors with DOT. So as OHRV trails are crossing highways or there's on-highway connectors, they submit them to Bureau of Trails, we review them, and then we submit them to DOT because we depend on their expertise, their engineering expertise to make sure it's safe to cross or use, highway right-of-ways and stuff for our trail connections. So that's an important part of that process, if you will. And as Captain Eastman mentioned, there's another bill upcoming in the RR&D committee that is adding 5 counties to on-highway use for OHRVs. I think this bill, as pointed out, is stating ATVs, but the other House bill is OHRVs, which includes UTVs, side-by-sides, as well as ATVs. But I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Is that you want to ask a
I
question?
have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Recognize.
Thank you,
Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Rennie, thank you very much for taking my question. Yep. Simply put, do you know, in your experience, how long does the process take?
It can take a few months. So the first part, when an OHRV club comes to us or even a municipality and say, hey, we want to have a highway crossing or connector here, we go out with our district supervisor and look at the crossing, with the person requesting, whether it's the club or municipality, check it out, make sure it's a good area to connect the trail network. And then we have actually an application form that goes to DOT for review. And then they'll often meet with us on site as well, and we'll look at the safety aspects. So line of sight, for highway traffic, what's the vehicle speed on the highway? What are the slopes approaching the highway on the shoulders? All those safety things should be considered when you're crossing a highway or getting on a highway system. Does that answer your question?
Few months.
It takes a few months, generally speaking. I will say, to DOT's credit, on the OHRV side, they created a GIS mapping tool a few years ago to kind of map out where all the OHRV highway crossing connector permits are. So both agency can look at that tool and see where the crossings are, see where there's pending applications, see where some have been approved or denied. And so we both have access as agencies to look at that information. And it's to help, get us better aligned to get those reviewed and approved in a timely manner. So that mapping tool is working pretty good. So, that's a benefit to both agencies, I would say.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions for Mr. Renner? Representative Bogert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. After listening to your testimony and that of DOT, is there anything that this bill brings to the table that current law doesn't have?
So right now for on-highway use, for OHRVs, in law now, it's Grafton and Coos counties. And then there's some other specific areas called out in the law, like there's a section, there's a highway crossing on Route 114 that's mentioned in the section of law, and there's a few others in Hillsborough County. But this opens up the whole state to OHRVs. And I think, again, there's an existing process for, and I guess maybe I don't want to confuse the issue, but there really is two issues for OHRV use on highways. There's crossing and connectors, which is one part of the statute, and the other part of the statute where I mentioned Grafton and Coos County, that's on highway use. So there's two different parts of 215A that you're looking at here.
Follow up?
Thank you. So you indicated that this bill opens it up across the state, and it also allows on-highway use across the state.
Correct. And
it doesn't specify what types of highways and byways and expressways.
correct. And those other sections of statute call out highways class 1 through 3 or 4 through 6 in the existing statute now. So those are all identified.
One
Follow up?
Thank you. So the current laws, they're to certain counties, as one aspect of it is, and it was indicated that there's already a House bill somewhere that's looking to expand that, but maintain the current permitting processes and the current language wouldn't change and stuff. So all the the guardrails that are in place would remain, as just adding new counties to the list.
Correct. That's my understanding of the other bill. It doesn't change any of the permit processes or review that we normally go through.
Thank you. Any other further questions for Mr. Renner? Representative Melvin.
Does this exclude dirt bikes?
OHRVs does not include dirt bikes. Captain Eastman, is that correct? Yep.
Would include dirt bikes, but not under the ATV.
Not under the ATV definition. Yep.
Seeing no further questions, thank you very much, Mr. Renner.
Thank you.
And at this time, I'm going to close the public hearing on House Bill 375. 1 second, please. Who are we missing? Just.
I'm missing some of the handouts here on these bills as it's listed there.
They were passed out last week, and I'm sure somebody picked yours up by accident, so. Okay, we're good, thank you. Is there anybody else missing any of these handouts? You are too. We'll take a brief 5-minute recess if you guys want to get your missing bills from Karen. Tell you she needs at least 2 copies.
Right, you're interested already, place, so I don't know, I question now whether we need.
At this point in time, I'd like to declare the public hearing for House Bill 181 open and recognize Representative Prohl. You're on, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and the members of the committee. I'm Representative Mark Prue from Hillsborough 15, which is Manchester Ward 8. Today I bring you Bill 181, reference to the Opticom system, which is what emergency vehicles use to change the traffic lights to our favor so we can get through them without crashing into people or people crashing into us, usually them crashing into us. But over the years, we've noticed that on the state intersections, they haven't been working. So I'm just bringing this to see if we can't get them repaired and maintained, because I'm not sure what happened. They used to do a really great job, and the problem with that is this one works, the other one was working yesterday, but now it's not working. And then we're looking for the lights, and they're not working for us, and so it's kind of confusing for us whether they're going to work today or not, or is this one working but the other one doesn't. So we're just trying to get them maintained, and that's really all I have. I know there's money involved, and but that's all I have. Any questions?
Do we have? Yes, we do. Representative Bogart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. This system that you're looking to have DOT start to take care of, who installs this equipment initially and who purchased it initially?
As far as I know, the DOT bought it and installed it.
The other questions, Representative Faulkner.
Could you basically describe what kind of vehicles use it? Is it mostly municipal vehicles, fire, police?
Fire,
ambulance?
police, ambulances.
So do any state vehicles use the Opticon, and is the,
Not the level that we use, as far as I understand. So, fire marshal might be using it, or state police might be using it.
brief follow-up?
Follow-up, please.
So right now, the municipality typically would be maintaining some parts of the system, the ones that are on their own.
Correct.
And they have the expertise to maintain it.
Yes.
So we're really talking about who pays for that rather than
So-
how it gets done.
Initially, when the system came out, and this was a long time ago, so I may have some of the, may be fuzzy for me on some of the exact facts, and I'm sure the people behind me have them. The system came out, once you declared your city or whatever a Opticom city, every intersection had to have it. And if it was in a municipality, on a municipal road, the municipality was charged with maintaining and keeping that system up. And I also knew that the state had the same deal. If they put them in and they were putting them in, it was their responsibility to maintain them. That's what I understood.
Thank you.
Any other further questions? Yes, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what your concern is basically that on the state roads, there's a problem with the maintenance.
Correct.
So what would be wrong with just ensuring that the municipalities do their part and that the state roads are taken over and maintained by the state?
So absolutely, the municipalities do their part. They maintain their system. Where the ones that are being neglected are the state ones, as far as at least in my area that I'm functioning in. Although I noticed one of them got fixed the other day.
So as a follow-up, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So is there a maintenance schedule? Like I have a security system in my home. My security company does a standard test monthly to make sure that my system's working properly. Is there a program for that in the municipalities or the state? You don't know?
In the municipalities, if we notice one, I used to work for the city of Nashua on the fire department. If we notice one wasn't working, we get back to the station, we call the highway department, and it was fixed.
Yeah, I used to be on the fire department too, and I'd be concerned if there was no regular testing, and then we get out there and we're going through an intersection, we could potentially have an accident. We're ready to go through that. So, all right, thank you.
I think any other further questions pertaining to that might be held for DOT when it's their opportunity to speak. If there are no other further questions for Representative Edgar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know there's different words to the effect of some of this, but just to clarify it again to me, the part of the system that is on the vehicles themselves is installed and maintained by who?
By us, the municipality that put it on their vehicle.
Okay, so you're doing all of it, okay.
Yep.
On your own vehicles, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next call on Lee Baronis from the DOT. Please introduce yourself. Welcome to Public Works. Introduce yourself, please.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Lee Baronis. I am the administrator of the Bureau of Traffic at DOT, also the state traffic engineer. Among other things, the Bureau of Traffic is responsible for the design, operation, and maintenance of traffic signals on state-maintained roadways. The department does not take a position on this bill, but I'm here to provide some basic information and to answer any questions. I have some notes here to kind of go through what preemption systems are and how they work, and the current situation. If you may, I'll proceed with that.
Please.
Okay, traffic signal preemption systems, that's more of the generic term than Opticom. They're technology that interrupt the normal traffic signal cycle to provide a traffic signal indication that's favorable to the user and then transitions the signal back to a normal cycle. I think many of us have seen them work here in Concord and other cities. Generally, these are installed for emergency vehicles. That's what we see predominantly, but they can also be used in other cases, such as for transit priority, for maintenance, and also for railroads, when railroads are in close proximity to a traffic signal. The components of the system are the initiator, which is usually mounted on a vehicle or some other location like a fire station, which initiates the call for a preemption. There's detectors that receive that signal, and then there's preemption circuitry within the traffic signal cabinet that interpret those messages from the initiator and trigger the change in the traffic signal controller. There are a couple of different technologies that are used. The one we're talking about here is an optical technology. The two common brands are Opticom as well as Tomar. Opticom is kind of the generic, or has become the name, kind of like Kleenex is for tissue. So not all systems are Opticom, but they may be optical actuated. The optical technology is a mature technology. As you heard, it's been around for a long time. I like to use the term mature instead of old. But it is, it continues to evolve. There are challenges with that technology, like many other technologies. There's issues of false calls. There's issues with the detection can only be received within a short distance, and it takes too long to cycle through the traffic signal phases to get to a green for the approaching vehicle. Generally, fire apparatus, which move a little slower than police cars may, it tends to work better for the fire apparatus than police cars. They may still arrive at an intersection, see a red light. There are other technologies that are used for signal preemption. These can include radio transponders, GPS technology that either goes to local antennas or up to the cloud. Some cities and towns are employing the alternative technologies at this point. The existing landscape. Under current policy and practice, traffic signals on state highways host emergency preemption systems as specified by the respective municipality. The choice of the technology is determined by the municipality to ensure compatibility between the vehicle-mounted initiators and the system at the traffic signal. For initial installations, such as a brand new traffic signal, the DOT includes a Tomar or Opticom traffic signal preemption system as part of the package that's installed, because it's certainly more economical to install it all at once. This includes the receivers, which are up on the mast arms near the traffic signal displays, as well as the circuitry inside the traffic signal cabinet. However, subsequent repair and maintenance of the systems testing falls to the responsibility of the municipality. In practice, the use and investment by municipalities in signal preemption varies widely across the towns in the state. Some towns don't need it, some don't use it. Some have one signal in town, and they, not participate. And then other locations City of Concord, Manchester, Nashua, which have their own traffic signal crews for their municipally owned signals, maintain their systems, and make full use of the capabilities of these systems. So we see a wide range across the state. I believe Nashua has just transitioned to an alternative technology using GPS and transponders that communicate to the cloud and that allow the system to understand where all the vehicles are and how they're approaching different intersections. And it's much more of a smart, intelligent system than the Opticom, which is essentially pushing a button saying, I want to come through this intersection. So as I said, it has been policy since these have been in use that the municipalities are responsible for maintenance of the systems. The department does assist municipalities where they can. However, when it comes to purchasing equipment or replacement parts, we work with the municipality to get that from them and have things installed. Where we can, as available, we do provide assistance with troubleshooting and getting systems back in line. Like I said, some municipalities have a full traffic signal work crew that is very familiar with these systems. Other municipalities do not and rely just on their highway road agent in some cases, in which case we need to provide more expertise to assist. So the proposed legislation specifies that the Department of Transportation would become responsible for the maintenance of the traffic signal preemption systems. I think the intended benefit is consistent performance and maintenance of preemption systems. We prepared a fiscal note, which has been included. Some of the key assumptions in that is that we are looking at an optical only system, that we're not endeavoring to use the higher intelligence systems because of the additional cost, and in many cases is not of value to the particular locations. We have excluded any work on the vehicle emitters. Those are the strobes that are mounted on the emergency vehicles. There's a wide variety of mountings and types and how they're powered, and that is not our business to be mucking around underneath the dashboard of a fire apparatus or police vehicles. So that was not included in our fiscal note. This would create a very significant expansion of workload. We have 4 traffic signal crews to serve the entire state. We estimate that we would need at least one more crew of 2 plus a vehicle to raise us up to 5 crews because of the workload that would be involved in maintaining these systems. And we've also assumed that this would only apply to signals owned and maintained by the state, not the municipal signals. So in summary, the advantages that I see are consolidated responsibility. It would would allow for centralized training to a limited number of people, so that each municipality didn't have to have someone knowledgeable or hire a contractor to do the work. It would help provide some consistent level of maintenance of the systems. And that would be an improvement for many communities who either don't or are unable to maintain their systems. However, it would also probably lower the attention in some municipalities where they have the capability and interest in that investment, and it basically brings everybody to a level playing field. Some of the drawbacks of the systems, there will still remain operational challenges. These systems can be troublesome, and it takes quite a bit of effort to get these optimized to work. You think about it, you're transmitting a flashing light or a flashing infrared emitter at a point way down at the end of the block on this little thing that sits up on top of a intersection. You've got dirt. We see a lot of spider nests that get into these detectors that block those signals. You've got potential wire disconnections, issues with the card. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with these systems. So I don't want anyone to have the illusion that magically everything is going to work every time, all the time. Another drawback is the amount of workload that this will add, as well as the potential liability for the state. If a crash occurs and there's question of whether the preemption system was operating properly. We already have liability with maintaining the traffic signals themselves. This adds an additional level to that. The response to concerns will be prioritized at a statewide level. Essentially, it's taking it out of local control. The town of Smithville may have someone who has a great deal of interest in their Opticom and would jump on any issues immediately. If it's at the state level, we have to assess and prioritize our work to deal with traffic signals throughout the state. And so that may not get the attention that the town of Smithville might be interested in. Now, I hope that's a fictitious town. I didn't mean to imply any particular town. One approach may not work for all municipalities. As I mentioned, Nashua has taken on an intelligence system that has many capabilities that work very well for them. That is not something that we would necessarily be able to provide for every municipality that wants such a system. The municipal signals would not be part of this effort, so there could still be gaps in maintenance, depending on how thorough the municipality is with work on their own signals. And also the municipalities and responder agencies would still be responsible for their equipment on their vehicles. So I'll stop there and I'll take questions.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Before I recognize anybody else, I just want to make sure I heard this correctly, that the current system right now is that after the municipality decides that they're going to install this system, that they maintain it, whether it's on a state road or not, because it's in their municipality. They maintain it right now.
Correct.
That's the current procedure. So if anything goes wrong, so you basically don't maintain any of these right now on state roads?
Correct.
Correct.
We are not responsible. We do assist when requested by towns. Some are very capable and don't need our assistance. Others do.
Okay, thank you. Representative Cloutier.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question in the bill, Roman numeral 2, on lines 11 through 13, it says the Department of Transportation shall include in its biennial budget request under RSA 9:4 funding for any administrative cost related to the maintenance of traffic signal preemption technology systems used for emergency vehicles. Could you explain briefly what administrative costs mean? On this whole subject, I'm a newbie, so
I am not sure exactly what that refers to as well. There is a cost to operating our maintenance unit at the Bureau of Traffic. There's a cost for the staff, the people, the oversight, the training, and so forth. I think expanding the number of crews as necessary will increase the overall cost of operation, the overhead, so to speak. Also, there will be increased interactions with each of the municipalities as we go through and upgrade the systems to bring them up into operation, to full operation, and kind of, like I said, level the playing field. I can't really get into what those costs might be at this point. I'm not sure exactly what that refers to.
Chairman.
Follow-up, please.
Okay, yeah. A question, I know this bill hasn't become law yet. If it passes, it will become law, I guess, as written July 1st of 2025. Do you know of any plans that the department has or any preliminary requests, because I realize the governor hasn't submitted her budget yet, about including money in its budget request for administrative costs for this?
Not in response to this bill. It is if it becomes we are not financially prepared for the additional burden of performing this additional level of work without additional funding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Jack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for coming. You've been very clear that municipalities understand that after the signal is installed, they're responsible for maintenance, and yet the prime sponsor is issuing a cry for help that the ones on the state roads, the maintenance is declining and the municipalities work great. Do we have any either data or can you speculate on how it can be that condition, that the maintenance that the town knows they're supposed to do isn't happening?
I guess it would be speculation. I don't know this particular municipality involved, and I don't necessarily have the details. I don't interact on this topic. Our signal maintenance crews interact with the towns, so it's easily. I would think it could be easily misunderstood that a state-owned signal. You wouldn't necessarily expect that a municipality would have responsibility for parts of it. In our business, it's not unusual, but I'm not surprised if there's a misunderstanding. But it has been a long-standing policy established when we first started dealing with Opticom and preemption. And it may be that municipalities are not aware. And so as issues come up, we try to make them aware, share that.
Follow-up?
If that's the case, can we do some outreach to the towns and the fire departments to make sure they know who they're supposed to be reporting problems to and who's responsible for fixing them?
Yes, we can do that. Yep.
Thank you. Representative Bogart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. When y'all install, when there's road work done and you're going to install a new signal system and the town asked y'all to add this Opticon type thing, y'all do a memorandum of understanding on the scope of the work that's being done and the responsibilities thereof? And is it spelled out in I call it a memorandum of understanding, which takes care of who does what and who's responsible for what and whatnot? Would that not have been spelled out in that document?
Yeah, there was, we have a history of varying levels of documentation in the past. All projects have municipal agreements that are part of the project. So if work is being done within a municipality, all of these items are detailed. Historically, I can't say that has been done. Back in the original days, it was handshakes and understandings. Life was a bit simpler then, and going back and establishing those agreements hasn't been necessarily a mission that we've had. So we deal with it going forward.
Follow-up, please.
And as you follow up and do upgrades and stuff, that would fall under that memorandum. At that point, when y'all do your upgrades and stuff to something that's existing, and that way you can catch up from past to the present?
Yes, we do. When there's projects that are done, and traffic signals have very long lives, so it's not often that one is removed and completely replaced. We have them added, but generally the existing intersections don't see too much work. So as new projects come in and establish new traffic signals, that's part of the the maintenance agreements.
Do we have any other further questions? Representative Juris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here today. Am I to understand that in a situation where a town takes care of a traffic, an Opticom system, that signal case it's being accessed by the town, but that signal case is owned by the state of New Hampshire?
Correct. The signal cabinet, the silver or black cabinet on the side of the road in the corner, is property of the state. Within that cabinet would be components that are provided by the town. So if a preemption system were added to a traffic signal after the initial construction, that would be in there. And like I said, when we do new signals, we include it as part of the project, but that becomes part of the municipality's responsibility.
Okay, and just a quick follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the municipality alert you, or is there an alarm or something that feeds back to a control point that says somebody's in that case, other than your technicians in the signal crew of the state of New Hampshire?
Generally, they contact us for access to the cabinets. To answer your question, no, there's not some sort of indication that someone else is in the cabinets. That's another issue, different topic for a different day. But it is, within the understanding of, we work with the towns, and we're familiar with those that have traffic signal crews. City of Concord, for instance, they'll call our chief technician and say, I need to work at, Fort Eddy Road. And we're familiar with their capabilities and trust them, and they access that and can do their work without us being there. In other cases, if there's someone we're not familiar with, or it's a contractor, we may have a technician come out and meet them, and then they learn together. Sometimes we can help them, and they can help us understand what they're doing.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Baronis. And at this point in time, I will close the public hearing on House Bill 181. It being 11:13 and we're running a little behind, I now open the public hearing on HB 300. The prime sponsor isn't here. I'm going to recognize John Cloutier to introduce the bill, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to be clear that I'm just here today to introduce the bill on behalf of the prime sponsor, Representative Horgan, who cannot be here, and I don't know the reason. So I take no position on this bill, and I would respectfully decline any questions because I don't really have a set position on this bill, so I wouldn't be very helpful. And I think you should listen to the rest of the testimony for people who both favor and oppose this bill, or can give us some technical expertise. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to call on Mr. Jason Briggs, please, to oppose this bill. Mr. Briggs, welcome to Public Works. Please introduce yourself. Please press the button on the mic.
There we
Thank
go.
you.
My name's Jason Briggs, and I work for the Conway Scenic Railroad in North Conway, New Hampshire. And I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the honorable guests, the honorable members of this committee for allowing me to testify. And I'd like to thank you, first of all. I've testified in Maine over 30 years for different venues, and no committee has ever sat and listened, every single one of you, to what people have had to say. people are up and moving and leaving, and you do a great job, and I respect that. And it means a lot to those of us that testify that you listen, and you're the winner in that department.
Thank you.
We oppose this particular bill. Conway Scenic Railroad has 57 miles of track that they negotiate with the New Hampshire Department of Transportation. We get no subsidy and no funds to operate that with the state of New Hampshire. We operate it at our own expense and take care of the work that needs to be done. The train this year, or in 2024, carried 150,000 passengers. It's doubled since 2018, when the SWERX took over. We employ 76 to 80 people full-time, and we never lay anyone off in the winter or during a slow season. Everybody continues to get their pay, salary, or a minimum of their 40 hours. We oppose it because this particular bill in section or line 4 through 8, for example, to assess the costs and incomes related to the removal of rail and ties were necessary to provide a level, safe surface for recreational activities on the existing track bed. Well, I'll give you an example. Once the tracks are gone, it's very difficult to put them back. And you, in this state, are very fortunate to have some wonderful train operators. You have private sector that offer tours, which is a huge economic impact to your state. And now with the new operation of CSX taking over from Pan Am as a better partner for most people, and other rail programs that that operate here in your great state. That Conway branch, believe it or not, goes all the way to Portland, and it's called the Mountain Division. So Conway Scenic has to the Freiburg line. Freiburg, Maine, for example, has a great trail and train track setup. That trail runs next to the tracks so that if they were ever needed, which they're not being operated on right now, and it's a great working relationship. Freiburg did an amazing job. Other communities in Maine, once the smaller communities have found out that the responsibility of the trails is their town to upkeep, have become concerned because they have to plow it, they have to mow the grass, they have to pick up the trash, put out the receptacles, all that sort of thing. Because in Maine, for example, the DOT or trails folks do not take responsibility of cleaning up or tending to the trail. So I don't know what that circumstance would be here in this great state of New Hampshire, but that's been a bone of contention for some of the smaller folks, smaller communities, just because some of them only have 1 or 2 employees that are in their highway division. So the Environmental Protection Agency says that we produce trains that offer freight and passenger rail service 1.7% of greenhouse gas emissions compared to 58.5 produced by cars, 23.4 produced by trucks in the United States. Passenger rail is even greener, coming in at 0.2%. In general, moving freight by rail instead of trucks reduces our emissions by 75%. The time is now to maintain and develop rail infrastructure so that we can build towards a stronger and greener future. Railroads are considered secure infrastructure, which significantly benefits any property owners adjacent to the track. And I mentioned the abutters expressed great concern about creating free access to the trail systems because, again, I use Maine, it becomes the homeless highway. And that's where tent cities and that things start to develop. So New Hampshire has a lot of great operators that are in the railroad business, whether it be scenic or commercial. Committees to review and to do studies always cost a lot of money. And you seem to have a system right now, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So we hope that you will vote down this particular SB 300 and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Briggs. Is there any questions for Mr. Briggs from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony, sir.
Thank you.
At this point in time, I'd like to call on DOT, Ms. Shelley Winters, please. Welcome to Public Works. Long time no see.
I think I'll be here a lot, so thank you. So for the matter of the record, my name is Shelley Winters. I'm the Director of the Division of Aeronautics, Rail, and Transit at the Department of Transportation. I'm here just to provide some, maybe some testimony, some background of perhaps for your consideration about the duplicative nature of this in comparison to House Bill 1468 that was passed last year and directing the department to work through a process to develop a planning group to look at the Conway branch. So the state owns 21 miles of the Conway branch. It does connect New Hampshire North Coast, an active freight line, to Conway Scenic, who are a great partner to us last year under House Bill 1468. And we delivered the report to the governor and executive council and members of this committee earlier this year in January. We convened a planning group to look at the best use and best value to the state currently for the 21 miles of state-owned corridor, and can submit a copy of the report for the record and for you to share. But essentially the outcome of that was that based on the public input and participation from members of the public, communities through which this corridor goes, and elected officials, is that it should be used for an interim use as a recreational rail trail. So the Department of Transportation and the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, of which one of my cohorts is here, we are in the process of effectuating a transfer of the management of the 21 miles from DOT to DNCR. And then DNCR would be working through their normal process of rail to trail conversion and what that would look like. We don't know how that will play out over time, but we believe that the product has been delivered and the wheels are in motion to go to governor and council by March. So by and large, we've gone through a public process with public meetings, stakeholders convened, and the department will retain a reversionary clause. So if in the future funds should be availed for rail or other more mass transportation uses, the state will still own this property. It will just be the day-to-day management will be deferred to DNCR, and the interim use will be recreational. Recreational is not a game or a mode or what the Department of Transportation normally does. So again, we wanted to give it to our sister agency who could better work with the users and the funding sources that support that. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Winters. Representative Jack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for appearing. Starting on line 12, this bill also establishes a general study committee to study rail. If I'm not mistaken, we have a state rail plan, and wouldn't that also be somewhat duplicative?
That's another good point. Yes, sir. So right now the department is updating its state rail plan. It was last done in about 2012. We're in the midst of public hearings and meetings for that in a stakeholder group, and that report for the updated state rail plan is planned to be delivered within this calendar year. So looking at the rail network from a holistic would probably be covered by that ongoing effort.
Representative Bogart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. I don't remember what bill it was last year, but this committee heard a bill that was going to remove track in somewhere in that area and turn it over to the trail. Is this the 21 miles that are being discussed now?
Yes, there were a few different bills last year. Some of them were more prescriptively looking at smaller subsets, 10 miles or so. But so the effort we looked at was aimed at that 10 miles originally of track removal, but we looked at the whole 21 miles because to the department, it's a contiguous corridor. So the effects of a 10-mile decision affect 21 miles. So it is the same, Representative. Yeah.
Follow up.
So it was then passed and agreed upon to go ahead and do this, and the DOT has been actively working towards converting it, removing rail and converting it to a trail. And this bill I'm sorry, it's a longer question, but, and this bill would kind of stop that process and reset it to leaving the tracks in place and doing something different? Is that the scope I'm understanding?
So line one and line two direct the department to request, to submit an RFP to look for on-rail uses, and by and large, the department has agreed to forego that as part of the direction under House Bill 1468 from last session, and then looked at the interim recreational uses. So we have not actively removed any rail. When we do the management transfer to Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, they will work through any stages or phases of rail removal as they develop trails. And that's not a foregone conclusion, because there is some interest in some recreational on-rail uses, whether it's motorized putt-putts, rail biking. So again, DNCR, and I'll let them speak to it, I believe will have an interactive process with the host communities to figure out what will be going on. But there's no planned active rail use, freight or passenger rail, that would occur upon the transfer from DOT to DNCR.
Any other questions? Yes, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. So, Mr. Briggs indicated they have 80 jobs that are supported by the existing Conway Railroad and 150,000 passengers per year use it. Now, the section that we're talking about, the 21 miles, that includes the existing Conway Scenic Railway use?
No, the 21 miles of the state-owned Conway branch are the state-owned privately, for which we have no tenant railroad. So the department has an agreement with Conway Scenic on its mountain division, the line that goes east-west across the state to the main line. So we have no tenant railroads who we will be who are actively providing service that we will be severing any agreements with.
Okay, so these are
Follow up.
So these are basically 21 miles that's independent of the existing use, correct?
Correct. It connects south of their private ownership. Conway Scenic owns some private portions of the Conway branch. The northern piece of the Conway branch is owned by Conway Scenic. So the 21 miles to the south of that are abandoned and have only been used for winter snowmobile use by DNCR. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Juris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. So when it goes to DNCR, will there be any work? I guess they're going to come up to testify, but will there be any pursuit of a possible rail corridor between our section of that railroad all the way out to Portland, Maine?
So that would be on the mountain division. So that would be separate from these 21 miles. So our 21 miles go north, connect to Conway Scenic, and then connect to the state-owned mountain division, which runs from the main town line over to, the main border over to the Vermont border. So DNCR wouldn't have any interface or interaction on any grants or development on the mountain division to Freiburg.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Winters. Do we have any other speakers? Seeing none, I'm going to move to close the public hearing on HB 300. Thank you. It's been an hour and a half. We've got a couple of minutes before we have to start HB 100. If anybody wants to take about 3 minutes to restroom it or not, you may go. We will open up the public hearing in about 3 minutes. Thank you. It being 11:34, I'm going to call the public hearing on House Bill 100, prohibiting the use of state funds for new passenger rail projects, to order. And I recognize Representative Ross Berry.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for hearing me out. I'm here to introduce House Bill 100, which would prohibit new passenger rail products. I do think the bill probably does need an amendment because I think the language is a little clunky. The purpose of it is specifically designed to stop the project number 40818, which is the Nashua, Manchester, Concord, quote unquote, commuter rail. So this has been that particular project. I'm going to leave my remarks to that particular project, which is why I signed on to the bill. It is time that we, as a state, accept that this is never going to happen. We keep spending more and more and more taxpayer money trying to study something that is never going to happen. This particular stretch has been in place before 2 times, and both times it has gone under because people didn't want to write it. So it's like, there was this movie by Lindsay Lohan a couple years ago called Mean Girls, and one of the characters kept using this word fetch. She's like, and she would try to interject it, oh, that's so fetch, that's so fetch. And finally they told her, stop trying to make fetch happen. Fetch is never going to happen. This commuter rail project, 40818, the one between Nashua and Concord, is fetch. It is never going to happen. We now live in a different world from when commuter rail would have actually been somewhat feasible. So we now live in a world where more and more people are working from home, more and more people want to work from home, and the need for this is basically gone. The proponents of the project are always putting forward kind of these fantasy lands things that it wouldn't do, like, oh, you'll be able to jump on the train at 6 o'clock in Manchester and go catch a game at Fenway. No, that's not how it works. It's commuter. So it's people leaving in the morning to go to work, people coming back from work. When we look forward in the future, rail is probably not going to be the way that humans transport themselves. The advent of electric vehicles and the advent of autonomous vehicles are basically going to replace anyone wanting to get on a fixed mode of transportation. It also erases the environmental concerns that rail might be better for than a CO2 emitting car. If you have a fully electronic vehicle that you can charge with clean energy and it will take you exactly where you want to go and you never have to touch the steering wheel, why would you get on a rail? Why would you ever do that? You wouldn't. So when they proposed this project before, they always have, it's like the same formula, which is every time they study it, they project less ridership and it costing more. So less ridership costing more. Every single time they go through this iteration of fewer riders, more money. And I think you're actually at a point now where projected ridership would be lower than the number of people that train going through there 8 times a day would disturb. So I used to live right by the proposed rail. Right now, that train track, it sees a train maybe once every 2 days. Let's just call it once every day just for the sake of benefit. It's very disturbing when that train comes through there. The train's been running there, I think, since like 1910 or something. It's not new, but it's, the house is shake, right? It's one of those things of like, you bought the house, the tracks were there, but you kind of knew the frequency of the schedule. This is talking about bringing a train through there 16 times a day. So a multiplier of how much time that train is going to be going through there that no one will be riding. If just being honest with yourself, no one's going to ride it. So you're going to disturb a bunch of people, a bunch of single family homes, starter homes, by the way. They're going to disturb a bunch of people. They're not going to ride it. Then you're going to raise their taxes because the fees you would charge won't cover the cost. So you're going to tax them more. You're going to decrease the value of the house. You're going to disturb them all so that you can have some project that no one's going to ride. And I'll leave you with this one. If commuter rail was going to be a thing, if that track was going to run again, that the third iteration of it, because it's already failed twice, if that was going to run again, someone would already do it. The people that own those tracks want a train running on those tracks. They want to monetize those tracks. If they thought that they could be economically feasible to have that train running and make money, I assure you, as greedy capitalists, they would do it. But it doesn't work unless the taxpayers fund out a bunch of money. So they're not going to do that. It's time we just put this issue to bed and accept that this is never going to be a thing. They had a vote, I think, last week in Nashua and maybe 2 weeks ago. where they actually discussed spending municipal money on this project. And I think they stopped it by one vote because somebody finally kind of said what I was said. Nashua's, the people that's aldermen of Nashua are not exactly of my political persuasion. Someone finally said, why are we spending $250,000 on a project that's never going to happen when we have homeless people freezing in the streets? That finally, somebody finally said the quiet part out loud. And they also recognized the reality, which was they said, I won't see the rail, my children won't see the rail, but maybe my children's children will see the rail. So let's stop spending money on things that are never going to happen. Let's just acknowledge it's not a thing, and we just move on. So I have to be very brief in questions because I'm in committee right now too. So I'll take like one or two, but I'm basically gonna roll. So I'm sorry to do that, but if I wasn't in committee, I'd stay here and have a good time.
Thank you, Mr. Representative Ross. Representative Jack has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for appearing. I'm curious why you want to stop Project 40818, which was completed 2 years ago in February of 2023 and is no longer in the 10-year plan or any funds being expended on it.
Well, it's the Nashua, like I said, I don't know the project number because that's what's in the bill. I'm not the prime sponsor, as I said, but I'm discussing the Nashua Manchester Concord corridor. So long as that rail's not running, that's the intention of the bill. Like I said, I'm here as a courtesy to the prime sponsor. So.
Okay, follow up then. There is no currently funded project in this corridor, so it seems like your goal is achieved without this bill.
I would disagree because someone will bring it back. It just keeps coming back. They've already brought it back twice. So if it's dead for a third time, it'll be back and forth. Put it to bed. And I do got to go with that one because I'm so behind.
You're excused.
Thank you so much.
I'm sure there'll be other people answer any questions. Representative Bohm, please. Welcome to Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
State your name and for the record, please.
Right. Ralph Bohm, and correcting what I printed out. I'm in Hillsborough District 38, in town of Hudson and Litchfield. Thank you. Anyway, commuter rail. In the early 90s, I was on Judd Gregg's Railway Commission. We studied bringing commuter rail to Nashua. We had many meetings for a year, and including representatives from the MBTA. After a year discussing and looking at the issues, we determined that commuter rail was not financially feasible. More so now. It was determined that the tracks from Lowell up would have to be completely replaced and include turnoff tracks. The existing track is 15-mile-an-hour freight, and worse now is there less train traffic. 15-mile-an-hour freight, that you can contribute, make believe it's a class 6 road, a dirt road. You can't put high-speed rail on it. Of course, the initial cost of the trains, the upkeep, etc., or that coming from my other pocket, the one that pays federal income taxes. The MBT operation in Massachusetts is paid for by their sales tax and property tax for most of the towns east of 495. 50 years ago, I lived in Hudson, Mass., and it was on our property tax bill for subsidizing the MBTA, and the train didn't even go through Hudson. Towns are assessed even though no rail goes through the town. The people that ride the train do not pay for the cost of it. It is all subsidized. The whole world is subsidized for rail transportation, except for what I understand, the Tokyo rail system, and they use people to push the passengers onto the train. And we know that, and we've heard about a lot of, well, the Down Easter, the train that goes from Maine to Boston. That's Amtrak. That's subsidized by your income tax. And they're in trouble. The argument that all transportation is subsidized only goes so far. Yes, in our property taxes, we pay for road plowing, improvements, etc. But that we can control by our vote. But road transportation benefits 100% of us all. We have to eat, the trucks bring the food, we get mail, and all that. So that's entirely different. We all use the roads. Instead of spending money on trains, the money should be spent on New Hampshire, making it more cost effective for businesses to move to New Hampshire so that the workers don't have to commute. And we heard that a lot of them are remotely. And if Manchester and Nashua want trains, they can pay for it. There was a train run once back in the 90s, and I think it lasted a year because it wasn't being utilized. So, and I've always been let those that use a service pay for it. My gas taxes go for the road, and one of the problems we have is these EV vehicles are using the roads for free, and that needs to be fixed. So, thank you.
Any questions for Representative Bone? Representative Faulkner.
It's a quick one. Are you aware that EVs in fact are charged $100?
Yes, but that's still a whole lot less than what I'm paying for gas. Gas taxes.
The equivalent of 500 gallons.
Yeah.
Which would take me and my car 50,000 miles.
I realize that, and that was just started recently.
Any other questions? Representative Juris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Bohm. When you lived in Hudson, Mass, and part of the town may have been part of the communities in Mass that were charged with supporting the T, the town of Hudson had, you still had commuter rail stops in either Acton or Fitchburg that those residents could access.
Yeah, but back then we looked at who was riding the trails, and we did a survey and whatnot, and we figured, hey, we can ride these people a van and it'd be cheaper, you know what I mean, and then the property taxes. And I know people in all the towns in Maynard and Hudson, in that whole area, really were very upset that that was on their property tax bill then, and it'd be worse now in New Hampshire. Can you imagine if I'm living in Litchfield and I had this thing on my property tax bill for subsidizing that maybe nobody used? So,
follow up.
Would you understand that it's possible that right now residents of Litchfield and Hudson commute to either Lowell, the Gallagher Terminal, or North Barica Station to catch the commuter rail, or possibly even drive down to Alewife to catch the Red Line?
I don't know of anybody that would use.
Conceivably, if I could follow, conceivably, if the trade stop were in Nashua, those residents could conceivably, cross the bridge and go to the station in Nashua, correct?
Well, one of the things we have in that, we have the Boston Express that goes through 91 and 3, the bus line. The problem in Nashua is the bus line mainly for Nashua people is in Tingsboro. There's one in northern Nashua, but I mean, the problem when we had the commission was finding a place in Nashua for putting the train station to start with. Nobody wanted it. But now and then people looking at it. And that was even Pheasant Lane Mall. We thought that would be a great place for it. But Pheasant Lane Mall said, no way, because people can come up and shop. But, so it wasn't feasible then financially for the cost of the trains, the subsidies that would be needed, and, and it'd be worse now. And like previous speakers mentioned, it was be less and less people going to Massachusetts now. And we want the people to come up to New Hampshire to work. People stay in New Hampshire to work, not have to commute to Massachusetts.
Any further questions for Representative Bohm? Representative Cloutier.
Okay, thank you. A question, Representative Bohm. I'm concerned the way this, I'm sorry. Apologize. Okay, I am concerned that the way this bill is presently written, it sounds like it could apply to the COG railway. We'd no more state funding for the COG because it is a passenger railroad, even though it's mainly used just, I think, for tourism. So I think, are you concerned about that? Because I just noticed this in reading the language.
But I think that came up before, and I thought this language had fixed that, but I'm not sure.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any further questions for Representative Bohm? Representative Edgar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This would prevent, I guess, the completion. I guess I'll probably get some help with this, but the completion of the report that was being done, that all the money was spent on, so that we could actually see comprehensively what the costs were at least going to be prophesized to be, maybe calculated, then we'd be able to make a better decision. A lot of people, if they saw the actual report, if there was an official one put out, then people make a decision. There'd be a lot of people would say, no, this just doesn't make sense. Or they might say, yes, it does make sense based on a report. This would prevent that from coming out.
Yeah, the current one, I don't know what the status is of the one that I had mentioned. I know there was a report done when I was on Judge Gregg's commission, but the latest one, what I understand, I don't know. I haven't seen it, and I don't know if one's been out.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But if this goes through, then we wouldn't be able to have a final report that everybody could take a look at and judge or make a decision. Would that be better than just throwing out different things that might be wrong with it?
But the thing is, it's like, I mean, testimony mine and the previous is like less and less people are going to be using the rail. And why do we need it? And why we want to continue spending money on something that will probably never happen?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions for Representative Bohm? Representative Rockmore. I'll get it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you understand this bill to prohibit the state from, say, repairing a track that carries freight because that also would be, because that track might also carry passengers and the state has its hands tied? It can't spend money on a...
Well, I understand the track now that does the freight is owned by the company that runs the trains. The problem is if we do the passenger rail, all that track north of Lowell up would have to be completely replaced along with turnoff tracks. In other words, for a train to turn off has another train's coming. So that track would probably have to be used state money to do it. Because the current company, I mean, if they were going to do rail, they would be doing it. I mean, commuter rail, they would be doing it. And nobody wants to do it.
Follow up?
Thank you. The situation I'm imagining is, say, the Conway Scenic Railway says, we have some broken track. We're a wonderful employer in the state. We're a great tourist attraction. Could the state pitch in a little bit to help us repair this track? And with this law, we would have to say, no, we absolutely cannot do that.
But yeah,
Am I understanding this correctly?
We have a budget problem now. How much money are we going to spend, and where are we going to get the money to spend it?
Thank you.
Representative Newman.
Yes, thank you. I had just read an article a few days ago about the Cog Railway is looking to go electric. Now that gets state support. So how would passage of this legislation affect work that's going on with that?
Isn't the Cog Railway owned by, is that the state owned? I'm not aware of.
It's not.
Here's a copy of the article.
Oh, I'm not aware of that. I thought that was a private owned.
It does get state support, whatever
State
the
support.
definition of that could encompass. So I guess I would put that question
Yeah,
to
but
you. What would you see to that?
But
Could
the-
that stop everything?
But I think the Cog Railway, I mean, that's pretty much self-supporting. And I think if, you know,
It does have state support. I guess I'll leave it at that. I
Okay,
don't
I'm
know
not-
to what,
I'm not-
to what the amount is.
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Yeah, and
Representative, I'm going to step in a little bit here. I want to keep this conversation limited to this current bill right now. And I think I might be able to help on some of this. This bill does say it prohibits the use of state funds for new passenger rail service.
Okay.
Not Cog Rail, not
Thank you.
existing, not
All right.
anything else. Okay. Representative Jack.
Mr. Chairman, the title of the bill does say new. However, if you actually read the bill, it says for the planning, construction, operation, or management of, and does not say new.
That sounds like a. Maybe an amendment is needed, maybe.
It does sound like that. Anyway, if there are no further questions for Representative Bohm, we can move on to the other speakers. Thank you. I'm going to call Representative St. Clair, please. Welcome to Public Works. State your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is indeed a pleasure to be here. My name is Charlie St. Clair, excuse me, from District 5, Laconia. A couple things on some of this. First of all, getting back to the last time a commuter train ran from Boston to Concord, excuse me, that ended in 1980. I believe it was in January or February of 1980. There's been nothing since then up through that corridor. And we're talking about the railroad company that owns that track now, south, that's CSX now. The people that owned them before, Guilford, spent no money on the tracks, and it was indeed 10 to 15 miles an hour. CSX is now in the progress of upgrading all their track throughout New England since they've bought all this track. And you can see their equipment out there working all the time. The Downeaster was mentioned. Obviously, I'm not in support of this bill. The Downeaster has been mentioned a couple times. If you're on that train, which I am a lot because I just can't stand 93, so I go drive to Dover to catch it to Boston. On days when there are Red Sox games, Celtics, Bruins, the train is full of their fans. So for somebody to say that that doesn't happen, that's just not the case, and I would encourage you to take the train on those days to see it. There are 5 train sets a day running between Brunswick, Maine, and Boston. Many, many, many New Hampshire people get on in Exeter, Dover, and even Durham. I watched them. This past month, the train reached its 10 millionth passenger. That was my briefcase. Its 10th million passenger. The train has been doing fine. So what I did when this bill came up before was I put a petition at my business up in Laconia, and I just set it there. I didn't talk to many people about it. When I did, they would usually just say, what? With regards to this bill. So I want to hand these in. It just says, we, the undersigned, request the state of New Hampshire invest in the development of passenger rail service throughout the state where possible. I am a resident of New Hampshire. There's approximately 600 here. If I had made this my goal in life, I could have had thousands, and there's no doubt about that. I was encouraged to do an online petition, but I thought this would look a little more, just look a little more power to it. So I'll leave that here, and please, if you're not going to use them, I'd love to have it back. I want to remind everybody that we all know public transportation never pays for itself. The airlines are subsidized. We subsidize the bus to Boston. Some of the buses say right on them, owned and operated by New Hampshire DOT. I have no problem with that. That's called a wide open public transportation system. One shoe does not fit all. We support the airlines. Laconia Airport gets an incredible amount of government subsidy. There's not even any commercial flights out of there. This is just not a common sense bill, and I really, really encourage you to kill this bill. Take any questions.
Any questions, please, for Representative St. Clair? Representative Juris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, thank you for being here today. Is it possible that some of those fans who catch the Downeaster from Dover or Durham, instead of those fans in Nashua or the surrounding areas going down to Barica or Lowell, could it be possible to take the train from the specific location as designated on Crown Street, which is wide open right now in Nashua, ready for a station? Could they catch the train there going southbound to Lowell, then into North Station? Is that conceivable?
Absolutely. And I went to a meeting when there was talk several years ago about bringing the train up to Manchester or Concord. And there were representatives there from the Fisher Cats who are just dreaming of this service coming up because they said what a boom it would be to their games there. And again, talking to Laconia, my constituents in Laconia, same thing. They just really don't understand why this hasn't already been done. I remind everybody that the initial startup would be with federal money, our tax dollars coming back to help us in New Hampshire. What a switch that would be. Because when we don't take that money that's out there for this type of transportation, it just goes to other states. They're there with their hands wide open saying, yeah, we'll take it, we'll take it. This would be a wonderful boom, not just for commuter, but for tourism. You take the Downeaster, you'll see people on there with suitcases. Look at the development that's going on in Dover around the station. It's incredible, the buildings that have gone up, all housing. And because people will take the train. They want to live near the station, and Dover's done a great job of reaching out to that. So there's so much of it out there. I made the offer the last time I spoke here. If somebody doesn't know about the Downeaster, I'll be more than happy to purchase you a ticket and take you on a tour. I believe I've done that with one of your members here, just to show how many people get on in New Hampshire. And how many people moved to New Hampshire because they didn't want to live in Massachusetts. So they moved here. Yes, they work in Massachusetts, but they now live in New Hampshire. The residents here, they pay taxes. It helps the bottom line right across the board.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. If you would. Okay, we mentioned going southbound, but sounds like it's almost possible for commuters to come northbound to go to events. So you mentioned the ball game in Manchester, but also to work. Is it possible for those commuters who live down the line to come northbound to work in places like Nashua or Manchester? Knowing too that the aldermanic chambers, the aldermanic committee in Nashua voted to put the rail study into the budget for next year, as opposed to passing it in this past session in a bill with other bills. So is that possible as well?
Of course it is, and I agree with the people that say we've studied this stuff to death, and they're spending a lot of money studying something year after year when new members come into the government. I would just say take a look over to the coastal communities and how they've profited from this, and how the state of Maine is now lengthened the route that the train's gone over there. I mean, this is not rocket science, I don't think. It's going to cost money. Everything we do costs money with regards to transportation. Everything.
One more real quick follow-up. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
As long as it pertains to this bill, Representative Juris, not about traffic either way, how and what's possible right now. As long as it pertains to this bill, you're recognized for a follow-up.
Thank you. So federal money, it was talked about, federal money to start this effort up. Is it possible that the federal money would help in the spur lines? We talked about the CSX tracks, to upgrade those tracks and to also install the spur lines in places like Manchester and Nashua.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I remind everybody that when the Downeaster, that's all we have to go on besides the Vermonter over there on the west side of the state. When the Downeaster first was proposed and was being built, you may look back to the screaming headlines in the Union Leader, what a boondoggle that was going to be, and a waste of tax money because nobody was going to ride it. And I would not agree with that, obviously.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Representative Vallone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Leclerc, were you aware that the New Hampshire Executive Council approved $1.2 million in a loan to the COG railway line improvement?
To the COG Railroad?
Yeah.
No, I was not aware of that. And since I don't use the COG Railroad, which is a very great tourist destination, somehow it slipped by me. I'm not aware of that at all.
So would you, I'm sorry.
Follow up.
Thank you. So would you categorize that as a subsidy?
Well, yeah, if they're giving money to anything, it's a subsidy.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Further questions? Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative St. Clair, for taking my question. In your previous testimony, you talked anecdotally about the Fisher Cats management team enjoying the idea of traffic coming up from Boston to Manchester. The question is there any data from the Downeaster that would support northbound traffic going to Portland, Maine to see the Sea Dogs at Hadlock Field?
I am absolutely positive there would be that data, and I think that it would be very easy to reach out and get that. The Downeaster's headquarters is in Portland, Maine. I do not have the woman's name in front of me that's in charge of that, but they keep very good records of all their passengers, the tickets they sell, where they get on, where they get off. They're very good at that. So that can be found easily. And if somebody doesn't want to do it, and I was tasked with doing that, I'd be more than happy to help the committee with that.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman.
Follow up, please.
Follow-up question regarding anecdotally about the possibility of rail coming north through Nashua into Manchester. Is there any data on as it relates to the Downeaster regarding the number of people traveling north that are actually getting off at Ogunquit, Old Orchard Beach, pre-established locations with amenities already in place that are traveling north because it's easy to go north, get off?
Absolutely, there would be.
Thank you.
And I think that's a great question, and I think it's well worth somebody following up. Good question.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Representative St. Clair.
And I can't thank you enough for giving me this privilege. Thank you.
Quite welcome. Call on Representative Jess Edwards, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Representative Jess Edwards, representing Auburn, Chester, Candia, and Deerfield. That's Rockingham District 31. I'm a co-sponsor of this bill. I think I wrote on the card I'm going to take a minute, maybe two, so I'm going to be blunt. Budgets are about priorities. As I look at the budget, we have a lot of priorities. We have potentially needing to step in and do a better job funding our pensions. We need to take a look at upgrading the state contributions to education. We're still liable for a massive lawsuit related to YDC. So for the next few years, I think we have some very strategic things that we need to keep our eye on. And as a risk mitigation approach, I do not think we should be taking on new spending possibilities. I don't think a passenger train is paid for itself anywhere in the United States. I believe the previous testimony of the representative in favor of this bill stated that. I have a lot of experience having lived in California with the bullet train to nowhere. They've spent billions on that. It caused them to take their eye off the ball. They didn't invest in fire prevention and fire reduction. And so that's a real world example of how trying to spend too much money and not keeping your priorities straight lead to other disasters. And so I would just encourage us to continue a moratorium on spending general funds on this particular project, because there are vastly more ways to spend our money that would probably do better for all of our citizens. That's my testimony.
Thank you, Representative. Will you take questions? Sure. Questions for Representative Edwards? Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Edwards, thank you for taking my question. Would you believe that the proposed Nashua-Manchester-Concord line goes through an 8-mile stretch of rail in the town of Merrimack, which would impact 4 neighborhoods and require the town to spend $60 million taxpayer dollars to move the town's own sewer interceptor line with no train station being proposed for the town?
That's not at all surprising. That's what happens when central planning steps in and doesn't take a look at real local needs. That's why this is better done by the private sector. I'd also point out that line of rail would not benefit the citizens of Chester, Auburn, Candia, or Deerfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions? Representative Edwards, you got off easy. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. Have a good lunch.
Peggy Gilmore, please. Welcome to Public Works. And you are from the Nashua Chamber of Commerce.
That's correct, and thank you, Mr. Chair. For
Please,
the record, Peggy Gilmore, representing the Greater Nashua Chamber of Commerce. I hadn't planned to speak, but did want to bring the business perspective to this. The Nashua Chamber has long supported the potential, I say the potential, for having passenger rail that would come to Nashua and onto Manchester and perhaps onto Concord, but that really wasn't so much in the feasibility of the feasibility. And the reason that the chamber has supported this is because the proven economic development that's shown when there is good transportation, good rail service through an area. Also, the stay, work, play, or people who have looked at what incentivizes young people to live in the southern part of the state, particularly, is access to Boston. And so it's seen as the potential for rail, passenger rail, Boston to Nashua and Manchester is seen as an incentivizer to bring young people here. And the rail goes two ways. And we have seen a bad workforce shortage in New Hampshire, and there is able workforce. We have on our board someone who runs a staffing agency, and she has said if she could get an easy passenger transport to Nashua, she could fill several jobs. So that's anecdotal. The other thing I'd say, as a prior legislature, to me, it's not good policy to prohibit something now, not knowing what the future will bring. As Representative Jack said, this particular project is not currently in the 10-year plan, but who knows what we're going to want and how we're going to set our priorities as the future comes. Things change. Transportation has changed. We see it. We don't know what changes are going to come, and we don't know what the future will bring around this. And so it seems that it's not a good idea to prohibit something not knowing what will be the future. And this committee, this I think is the third time this bill has come before this committee. First time it was somewhere it was ITL'd. And the last time it was retained. And so when you looked at it in the fall, this committee, I believe, voted unanimously not to recommend future legislation. And here is the future legislation. So just saying that you've had it, you've done it, maybe it's time to stop it. That's all.
Thank you. Any questions? Representative Cloutier.
Chairman, now remember when, and as I said, in 2019 and 20, when our committee passed a bill that then Senator Melian LeVake sponsored an engineering project, and we got it through the House. No, it was a Senate bill. I'm stand corrected. It was a Senate bill. It was passed the Senate, came to the House. This committee voted it out. We passed it on the House floor, and then the governor just let it become law without his signature, then Governor Sununu. So something was started, and some money, I think, was appropriate for an engineering study. And I don't know if you can comment on that and some of the data that this study has uncovered so far about how much it would cost to construct passenger rail between Manchester and the Mass line.
I can't speak to that study, the results of that study in a way that I would be comfortable bringing forth right today. But I will say When the final part of that study was stopped because the executive council didn't appropriate the funds, you know, again, a couple of people, I think Representative Boyd has asked for data, or people have asked for data. You can't have the data to make your decision if you don't get the data. And so to prohibit the continuation of a study which would complete the data, again, I think is not always good public policy.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I call on Shelley Winters from the DOT, please, to speak. Welcome back again to Public Works.
So again, for the record, my name is Shelley Winters. I'm the director of the Division of Aeronautics, Rail, and Transit at the Department of Transportation. And here to oppose, again, I'm not here to advocate for the New Hampshire Capital Corridor project, which has been bandied about. Just looking at the wording of the bill, we're really here to express a concern about leaving future options open, and also point out a concern which was brought up by some others that testified or on the committee about the specific wording using passenger rail. The title again is clear, says new. When you get into the text of the bill, it does not use the term new, and it converts from using commuter rail down to passenger rail. That's been a question we've had as a department the last 3 times this has been brought forward, is what is the definition of passenger rail? Could that be construed to include the existing Amtrak services, both with the stop in Claremont on the Vermonter, and then the Downeaster on Dover, Durham, and Exeter? Does it include the Cog Railway? Does it include Conway Scenic, who was here to testify before, that bring a lot of tourist business into the state? So again, our concerns are about the wording in line 9 with passenger rail and what that definition means. And again, tying our future selves and what does state funds really mean, because as was brought up before, the COG and other railroads have accessed a revolving railroad fund that's established under statute as under 22866A. The state has a revolving railroad fund where the state bonds and the railroads pay back over a 20 or 30 year period for the investments that they make in rail lines, and a lot of those are supporting passenger related services. And also the state has a special railroad fund which is established under statute 22868. It's a non-lapsing funds that are derived from the use of state-owned railroad properties are put into this restricted account and then reinvested by the department. And again, some of those tenant railroads that use our railroad lines are providing passenger related services. Again, not commuter, but passenger related. So I think we want to focus on the wording, and the intentionality of the wording right now seems to be a little bit broader, and that's been our testimony in the past as well. We currently have nothing in the 10-year plan. As was mentioned by Representative Jack, the last iteration of Project 40818 came to an early conclusion in winter of 2023. We pulled that project number out of an earlier 10-year plan. There's nothing in our current 10-year plan relative to anything that would be by any other name construed to mean a commuter rail project between Massachusetts to Nashua, Manchester, or Concord. So just wanted to provide that clarity that we currently have nothing in our 10-year plan relative to the project, with the most attention here today.
Any questions for Ms. Winters? Representative Jack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. Can you just clarify the study that was stopped and is posted on the website? Does it have the completed financial plan, or did they need to do more work on that? I had heard at one point the additional work they wanted to do was the New Starts application only.
So the financial plan that is posted on our website is based on a 30% design level. So had we continued, the design would have likely escalated. That was also in the time period that Pan Am was being acquired by CSX. So additional conversations would have been had with CSX and with the MBTA to talk about additional needed improvements. So it's final based on the engineering done at the time and making some inferences. So.
Further questions? Representative Cloutier.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, a 30%, what is that again? I'm sorry, level? I didn't get that.
Design level.
Design level,
Design
okay,
level.
thank you. And a follow-up, please.
Follow up.
Would this bill as written ban future funding for improvements to such tourist as the Cog Railway and other legislations as you read it, as it's written now?
I think that's our concern with the wording saying passenger rail and note state funds without further clarity to state funds being defined or passenger rail being defined. There's a concern about the broad application of that. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for Ms. Winters? Representative Malone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to follow up on that. I mentioned earlier WMUR article about a $1.2 million loan that was given to the Cog Railway. Are you familiar with that? That was done in 2021?
The dollar amount escapes me, but the Cog Railroad has applied and been a recipient of railroad revolving loan funds through the department, correct?
Follow up.
There was also $160,000 that was awarded for other projects. Were you aware of that, or something? Is that fund that you were talking about, that revolving fund that's?
The railroad revolving loan fund is restricted to certain classifications of railroads. The only recipient in the last few years, the last few rounds, has been the Cog Railway. In the past, it has been Plymouth and Lincoln Railroad and others, but I would have to check on the other $160,000 you talk about. It could be from a different source. It's not ringing a bell. It's usually a much higher amount through us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further questions for Ms. Winters? Representative Rockmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So these loans from the revolving railroad fund, are they below market rate or market rate?
I'm not aware of the Treasury. We send them the information. They look at what the balance is in this revolving loan account, and then they work just like they do through all the other bonded. It is lower rate that we offer than they can get privately. That's why it was established, and that's why we still receive applications. But I'm not sure what the rate is that the state gets when we go through that bond issuance.
Thank you.
Further questions? Seeing none, I just want to point out that Ms. Winters brought as her backup here, Steve Labonte and Kathy Balkay-Sampson from DOT, who bring with them a wealth of information on this, should we have had any questions. Seeing no further questions, and it being 12:25, I'm going to hereby adjourn the public hearing for House Bill 100. Adjourned here. Representative Rockmore was first.
I just wanted, I recognize that we don't engage in debate with the witnesses, and I've tried to resist that temptation, but I do want to point out that we do have a lot of expertise on this board with the